Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Friedenthal. I am the founder and CEO of Tolerisk. For those who may not be familiar with Tolerisk, we provide risk tolerance technology designed specifically for the fiduciary process. So it's not just a personality profile, but also incorporates financial data to measure your client's mathematical ability or capacity to take risk. If you haven't seen Tolerisk recently, please reach out to us. We are happy to schedule a demonstration so you can see how advisors use Tolerisk to accelerate practice growth and reduce compliance risk. Okay, enough of the shameless plug from the sponsor. I think everybody knows the drill. Given the size of this group, everybody's phone is muted. You are, however, highly encouraged to type your questions in the chat box. We will be relaying your questions to Tiara and Sheryl as we go. I am very proud to introduce our thought leader speaker for this afternoon. I've had the privilege of knowing and getting to know Sheryl Hickerson for the past 2 years, as Tolerisk has been a proud supporter of Females in Finance, an organization that Sheryl founded to support women in financial services. I'm sure I do not have to tell any of you that women are very underrepresented in financial services. Sheryl has grown Females in Finance to an incredible, I didn't even know this, Sheryl, an incredible 4,100 members. Now, membership includes not only women in financial services and financial technology fields, but also male allies who are also committed to supporting the growth of women in the industry. The Females in Finance community focuses on supporting recruitment, training, advancement, and retention of female talent in the financial services sector. In addition to Sheryl, I am very pleased to introduce Tolerisk's own Tiara Prince. She's our national sales manager. Prior to joining Tolerisk about a year ago, Tiara spent 4 years at eMoney and 4 years at an advisory firm at the beginning of her career. Tiara has the honor of interviewing Sheryl this afternoon. I am looking forward to some hard-hitting questions, Tiara, so we gain some insight into Sheryl's thoughts and how we as an industry can do a better job of supporting women in financial services. So that said, welcome, Sheryl, and welcome, and thank you, Tiara. I'm going to sign.
Thank you, Mark.
Turn my camera off.
And thanks, Sheryl. Appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely.
So kick it off for those that may not be familiar with Females in Finance. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about the organization and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, and so I really appreciate all of this and the time today. I'm going to shock Mark even more. We have 4,628 members now, and it continues to grow. It's really phenomenal. About 5 years, 2017, I just kind of got fed up with the industry at large. I had been working in financial services since I was 19. I'm 52, so we can do the math on that. And it's been a wonderful career option for me, but I kept feeling like that everything was exactly the same. Like I'd show up, and I work with a lot of first and onlys. I'm the first woman, to be in this firm. I'm the first Black woman to be in this firm. I'm the only woman to be at this conference, the only speaker. And it just, the first and onlys runs very, thick as thieves when you talk about women in any type of, DEI underrepresentation. So when I went into this, it really was, I had this idea, like if I could get 200 people, I don't even know why that number, I still to this day go, what was that number about? But 200 people, they could just, get behind the idea that we can make this profession a better place for everyone. And that 8 days later, we had 200 people. And I was like, oh boy, maybe I shot a little low on that number. And I didn't really even know at the early days what that meant. But what I did know inside of my heart, like we feel things a lot of times as women, was I was tired of showing up to the events, tired of showing up to the things, and it was always the same. And I think you probably experience this too, where it's you go into a room, the speaker's almost going to tell you the same types of stories. And one day I just decided, what, we're going to make that change. And so that's when Females in Finance really, I took it and decided, if I'm going to do this, let's just go. Let's just go and do it. Left my job, my very comfortable job, which it's very scary to do. And off we went and into the unknown abyss of how do we change financial services? And I believe women were going to be a big responsible part of that change. And I knew that along the way, as I was talking to women And Mark kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the top of the call, which was I started asking women, do you intrinsically feel successful? Because you could feel successful, Tiara, but
Mhm.
I can't deem you successful, right? You have to feel that. It's something inside of you. When I asked those women, did you ever have a male ally along the way to help? 100%, not 97. I think this is really important. 100% of the women who responded that they feel intrinsically successful also said they had a male ally somewhere along the way who helped with the momentum, the trajectory of their work. And I realized, okay, we really need to go back and focus on this. And really, if you think about it from mathematics, which is what FinTech is really good, is always the math of things. And that is, if they're a part of the problem, they got to be a part of the solution. I mean, they really do. We can sit there and say all the time, hey, women are great at this. Hey, we can keep shouting that. But we really need the men to go, they are, and be
Yeah.
a part of the change. And so our male ally network, our man initiative, because everybody had a women's initiative. I'm like, I'm having a man initiative. And the male ally network was sort of birthed from the thought of we do need all of us to be better together. And so that the offering, the things have changed. We've always been membership driven. We've always had a free option, continue to have one today to join Females in Finance. But I mean, it's just been a really unbelievably honor for me. It's been a biggest honor to be in this space. I was on a call this morning. One of our members said,
Mhm.
because of being a part of Females in Finance, her business, she has made more money. She has had more influential in places. And I sat there and I thought, wow, that was really impactful to
Mhm.
me too. Because remember, I mean, I'm pouring into this too, but it was just to stop and know that there's going to be legacy beyond this has just become very probably my newest thing of honor as well. But we
Mhm.
continue to grow, and Mark has been such an amazing asset to us in the fintech space, and I got to meet you from it
Yeah,
too. So this has
absolutely.
been it's been great. I really appreciate this so much.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. I think kind of the biggest questions that have come from being on the side of, females in finance, females in fintech, what are the biggest issues or hurdles that women typically have to overcome in the industry?
Oh boy. The two factor. What does that mean? You're either too loud, you're too quiet, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too extra, you're not enough. I mean, there's always too something, right? And I actually had them one day, I did a word cloud and asked everybody to fill in the blank of what you were told to. In my lifetime, I was told I was too outspoken, too assertive, too loud, too pink, I mean, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And so every time and we filled this in, and it was really overwhelming. But what was really interesting is I sent it to the men
Mhm.
in our group and said, does it surprise you to find out that women are get told all the time they're to something? And they were like, I did not realize it was this many things. Like it was
Mhm.
really eye-opening for them to go, wow, And although they may not be the people partaking in the two, part of this, it's very real. And I also say, though, remember what I just said about being a part of the problem. We are also
Mhm.
part of the problem as
Yeah.
women. We're not leaning into the change of the things that need to happen from us too, which is using our voice when we're really certain we don't like something or don't. We tend to go back, and there's a variety of reasons of why we do that. And so we at Females in Finance at least try to give voice and space and safety to be able to use our voices and be heard. So it goes from both sides. There's no way that I'm going to fix all of the problems in
Mhm.
financial services. We're just not going to do that. But together, having accountability to it is going to help us make this a better space. And I think that the other thing too about women that I've really genuinely loved is watching them see greatness in people who may be outside our profession and saying, we really need to tap the shoulder of this person, even though they may not be in financial services, they'd be great for this role. And I
Mhm.
think we have a tendency to see that more, and it's helping to do some of our Fearless Pledge commitment, which is to hire and advance more people.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting thing. And the last part of it I want to say too is that we tend to skew younger at Females in Finance. We're 35 to 44 is our average age. That's much younger than the
Mhm.
industry as a whole. There's a lot of reverse mentoring going on. So as much as us vintage, and I don't say seasoned because I'm like a Prada bag baby, okay, 30 plus years people in this. I love the reverse mentoring from young folks like yourself who say to me, hey, Sheryl, have you thought about doing it like this? Or hey, Sheryl, did you know there's an app that does that? I listen to that. And it's helped me become, yeah, I want to say more hip or whatever. Yeah, I guess. But it's really made me more attuned to where innovation has come into the space and how I can continue to adopt and adapt my practice.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a lot of pieces to that question that I get to see in play at all times.
Mhm.
It's been really, really interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And kind of on that note, with like more so the age being, like you said, 35 to 45,
Yeah.
what issues do we see with retention in women? Is that something that your
Yeah.
team tackles as well?
We do. We do. So we're soul makers.
Mm-hmm.
Women. We make people, all the people.
Yep.
You meet a person, a woman made it.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is. And because of that, that soul making, which should be one of the most, unbelievable gifts that we are able to do, comes with a lot of challenges as well, because a lot of women rear children. A lot of women, besides just the birthing process
Yep.
part of it, and they're also the mothering process of it. Those tend to hurt us later in years. We don't maybe feel it in the moment, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happening. But it comes and creeps up when we start looking at things like, how come our retirement isn't as
Yeah.
robust as a man's, or how come? And I do think that the female financial advisors are very attuned to that as well, and tend to be more astute in their planning process of, hey, you're going to have these gap years of where you're not going to have as much income. I think the other thing too is that, when you talk about leaning into different problems, some of the transparency of the women is talking about whether it's fees that they're charging. Also, if they're in a situation where they're an employee, how much are you getting paid? Like, they're actually asking just really raw questions, things we were told never, you're
Yeah.
never supposed to talk about that. Yeah, we ripped that band-aid off and said we want to make sure we're all making the money that we're supposed to be making. And then teaching negotiation skills on how to do that, how to create our practices to be better for whether it's a merger and acquisition, what a business valuation looks like. Those conversations are tough,
Mm-hmm.
but we're having them. And I love the things I love the most is that the men will come back and go, I kind of wanted to ask that question, but man, you women are just, they do, the tables have kind of turned a little bit. They're saying, wait a second, you're asking very vulnerable, deep, sometimes taboo questions. And I love that, because we're starting to say, wait a second, our voice is important. And I love when I do love when the men go, I wanted to ask that, but I was so happy she did it. And
Yeah.
I didn't have to ask the question. So there's a lot of learning that goes involved with that, to make certain that we are hiring the best talent that's out there. We're advancing the best talent as well. And that comes from not only as an industry specific thing, but an intrinsic part of who we are too, that we're going after that next piece, and we're trying to provide resources to be able to, for each of our members to get there.
Sure. And kind of on that topic of resources, what resources, additional services do you provide to the people that are members?
Yeah. So, my gosh. So, we made a big announcement in October of this year about our new learning library that'll be coming effect January 1st. So, we'll actually, for our membership base, we'll have access from partners such as, Tolerisk. They have, information that'll be in our learning library to do that. We found that there's a variety of stair stepping that people want to do when it comes to learning. You have your DIYers. I just want to listen to it like a podcast or whatever on my own. There's others who are, I do better in a class environment. Like, I want to be able to go into a workshop and be taught, and okay. And then you have others who want to do more one-on-one kind of a things, or 2-to-1, not too crazy, big or whatever. We'll have a lot of different opportunities within that in our library. And I think that that's one of the things that's really important to, to the learning aspect. But as far as other things, we do a lot of matchmaking. So a lot of our members will come to me and say, hey, Sheryl, I'm looking for somebody who does this, who does that. And we know that. We have a chat capability as well between our members to be able to talk, a speakers bureau, a career center. We have a children finance,
Mhm.
like education piece. We definitely have our affinity programs, which are like Unity, which is for LGBTQ professionals, to not only know what it's like to be an LGBTQ professional, but what about working with families in that space? What does it look
Mhm.
like? What is professionals in that space? We have gosh, the list just kind of goes on and on. And sometimes it's so one-off to some degree, because we are somebody will come. This is one recently that we've been sort of challenged to find answers to, and we get a lot of things on the down low of people
Mhm.
saying like, I think I want to do a merger and acquisition. I think I want to have my practice bought. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, because I am a vault,
Yeah.
and it's finding them the right owners or the people to sort of make the connection there. And that's not something that I typically come from that background, Tiara. That's
Mhm.
not my background, but they trust me so much
Yeah.
that they're like, I'm going to tell you this in confidence. Who could I talk to about this? And then we have some great partners who actually fill that role as well. But it's just been an unbelievable, like, we've been able to sort of open up the veil, to see what's behind there, and then trying to make certain that every member is seen for the forest of people that they are. And everybody has unique needs. But I do think we do a good job of not only personalizing but customizing things as
Yeah.
well. So it's a lot.
Oh yeah. And I know we spoke a lot kind of on the topics of, females in finance, the
Mhm.
advisor's perspective. Now, looking at the client perspective, do you see differences when you're working with, your men client versus your women clients? How do
Mm.
you approach them
Yeah.
depending on who you're working with?
Yeah, what's more interesting than that, than the gender part of it. So
Mhm.
we've been working with a company out of Atlanta, DNA Behavior, Leon Morales, and doing assessments, like business style assessments, not only for us to understand our members, because a lot of people done Colby. We'll use as an example, right? I felt like the first time I did Colby, I thought, oh, she told on me. Like, that is me. I did not
Mhm.
like it, to be honest with you. I felt very like, this is a whole different level of behaviorally opening up, because
Yeah.
behavioral finance is real.
Mhm.
We have traumas and triggers and things that we are, and it's really not always gender related as much as people think it is. It's what's happened to us, and then what does that look like later on. I'll give an example. When I was 13 years old, my dad was, I grew up in, rural Missouri. If you want anything, you're going to work for it and
Mhm.
buy it yourself. And I would, get money. I would babysit. I would mow lawns. I did all these things, and I would bring the money home, and I'd have, like, let's say I got $20 for, $10 for babysitting. Right off the bat, my dad's like, 50% goes into savings.
Mhm.
And then there was 30% of this money went into his pocket to pay for the gas to drive me to, and I thought, are you kidding me?
Mhm.
But what he was teaching me is that when I got a job, 30% of the money was going to go to the government for
Yeah.
taxes. So when I got my first paycheck, instead of having that big alarm, you took money out, which a lot of my friends were like, what is that? And mind you, this is back in the day when we made $3 and like 12 cents an hour, or some crazy number. Okay. Which is, you know, but I was not at all shocked, because I was already prepared
Yeah.
for those things. But when I was 13, I saved my money. I went down to a famous bar, which here in St. Louis is like a Macy's, and I bought a Swatch watch. I was been saving for a Swatch watch. Oh, I was so excited. Boy, I can't say any more 80s than Swatch watch. And I remember standing in front of that glass and looking down, and I was pointing to the lady that I had my money, my $35, my Swatch watch, which that was a lot of money back in like 1982, FYI.
Mhm.
And she got in there, and I'll never forget my dad's words. You're gonna buy that crap with this is what you're buying with your money. Now, mind you, I had put my money in savings. I had paid my 30%
Mhm.
tax to my dad for whatever. I had done everything. So this was my spending money. And that trigger, that was actually a traumatic experience for me, that unbeknownst to me at the time,
Mhm.
that I became so crazy about my money. Like, well, should I
Yeah.
buy that? Should I buy that? I questioned everything. Later on, years later, that actually came to fruition. And when I did, was talking to Leon and his team there, and we did this behavioral thing, I found that a lot of it was driven off of that. Guess what? That didn't have anything to do with gender specific part. It had to do with my father not approving of my expense. And then
Mhm.
therefore I was watching my pennies all the time
Yeah.
because I didn't know. I think now what we've gotten to be really smart about, yeah, there's going to be some and it's very overgeneralized to some degree too, because
Mhm.
some people, for example, men tend to be more transactional, women tend to be more emotional. Those things are, but those are very overgeneralized. I'm much more interested today where behavioral finance is going and showing Sheryl has a trigger on spending money, and we need to make it okay, or we need to talk about those things. And I love watching these financial advisors now realizing this behavioral piece of it. It's real. And you guys have that in your software too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Behaviorally, you have a lot of those kinds of questions that you're reflexed against when you're going through the risk assessment, right? They're very, very powerful into how we work with clientele, or how we don't appeal to some clients too, because we just don't understand their behavioral style. And then we think, oh, they didn't like us, or I didn't get along with so and so. No, it's just a behavioral thing. Kind of like Colby said, this is how I'm going to be. This is what this does. It teaches me how I'm going to be, and what your software does teaches me how I'm going to behave with risk in that space too. So I tend to shy away from the gender specific part of it and be more focused on how do we look at things behaviorally now, because that's generally what is, I have 2 children that were adopted. My son grew up in a very poor environment. It took him a very long time to understand that there would be food in that refrigerator all the time. He grew up without food. Now he is much better, but he went through a period of time there behaviorally because he'd already been challenged against that, right? I think if we spend more time worrying about that part of it behaviorally than the gender part of it, I think we'll actually do better for our clients and ourselves and start to see where that piece lies in it. But I love that you guys do that in your assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. So where would you like to see, the industry, females in finance going even next 5-10 years?
I want everybody to hire a woman and put me out of a job. Y'all, I'm 52. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'd say that kind of tongue in cheek, but not really. I would really like to see us. I love, love, love more often than not that I love the men who come to me and say this. I think that I need to hire women to increase the bottom line of my practice. Yes, yes, you do. Yes, you do. That to me, I think the other thing I would like to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years is for people to challenge their unconscious bias. And what does that mean? We all have it, and it's part of in order for us to stay alive, it's built into us as babies so that we know how to keep ourselves alive. And yet we don't do the challenging against ourselves of it enough. So what do I mean by that? Maybe take a look at your book of business, and does everybody kind of look alike? Because if so, you got an unconscious bias and you're not changing it up. Maybe take a look around at the events that you speak at and look out and really look in the audience. And does everybody look the same? Because if they do, then you can tell there's an unconscious bias. And I know that makes people uncomfortable. One thing that I think you can do immediately, because I believe that in order for change to happen, I say it's the 4 A's. You got to be aware there's a problem. I'm aware that this is a problem. Great. I accept that this is a problem. Great. I'm going to adopt principles to help work on the problem, and then I'm going to adapt it to my business. So if that's the case, one thing that you could be doing today, anyone could be doing today, one, if you're going to a conference, it's conference season. We're getting towards the end of it, I guess, but it'll be picking right back up in February, March again. I'd shift. All the people are going. I know. Challenge yourself to sit with somebody different at a meal. Break bread with somebody who you've never done that with. We all tend to go back to that lunch line from kids and look around like, where's our friends? Don't do that. Just walk up to a table that has an empty seat and sit down, or say, is the seat taken? 99.9% of the time, no one's taken that seat. And someone will say, it's for you, or have a seat, and sit down and learn about the people around you. That's a very easy thing actually to do. But I think that the other thing is to really look at your connections of the people you're connecting with, the articles that you're interacting with. Are they all the same? Are they the same? Challenge yourself to go look for it. Actually seek out different, perspectives. And don't go argue on LinkedIn, because I know who you are and I just don't want that. But in all seriousness, it's about changing things up, because that's where it happens. Disney Institute, I love this. They call it listening at a different perspective. And what they mean by that is people who, those of you who are faith-based, maybe you go to church or synagogue, or you go someplace and you sit, usually in the same seat, same area. In fact, you get annoyed if somebody's in your seat at church, because you're thinking, y'all, that's my seat. You can't have my seat. Because why? Your body likes sitting there because it knows where all the noises are. Again, the music's going to come here, the person's going to come there. Pick yourself up and move to the other side and watch how hyper aware your skin even is to it being different. You're listening at a different perspective. You're using all of your senses to be aware of your surroundings around you. If we did that in our business, it would affect our bottom line positively. I assure you, because all of a sudden we're going to be hearing, seeing things we didn't know before, just because we've been walking in those same shoes, and we're looking at those other shoes going, I don't know about that. I like these comfy shoes. Just changing that up. But I love listening in a different perspective. It's one of the best lessons I've ever picked up from Disney Institute.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And then how can advisors today prepare for the consumer market? So what can they do to really put themselves out there?
Absolutely. First, recognize that they're not consumers anymore. They're prosumers. They are
Mhm.
professionally consuming information today like no other time in history ever. In fact, so much so that the anxiety levels of people are overwhelmingly high because they're taking in more information than a lot of times their brain can process. And that's where FOMO comes in and all this
Mhm.
other stuff because we're just like, oh my gosh, if it, I want to listen to that podcast. I want to watch this. I want to binge Netflix. We're doing everything at extremes now, right? So they're
Mhm.
professional consumers. So the chances are that advisors today, if you think that your client's not on Twitter, they're not on Facebook, they're not on wherever, I assure you they are, even if they've made up some crazy name like, Humpty Dumpty 1213. It doesn't matter. And they're watching and they're wanting to behave. Everybody thinks that everybody's just going to come to my website and no, they're not. You know why? They don't know
Mhm.
your website.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a really good example right now because I believe in behavioral metrics of how
Mhm.
people behave. So today, if anybody opens up, I don't care if it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter, Instagram, the first thing that happens when you open that app is your eyes dart immediately to the right because that's where notifications are.
Yep.
You're looking and they're all in red because you're looking for that red dot. And the higher the number of the notifications, the more euphoria you feel. You start getting
Mhm.
that dose, that dopamine push is kind of starting to hedge off. And because you're like, if it says 23, you're like, I hit an artery.
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing. And if you think about it, it's very much the same as anybody who's an addict to some degree. We've become addicted to the notifications on our phone, addicted. Nikki Clark from Nikki Clark Marketing, she said how she would wear her Apple Watch and she had to stop wearing it to church because she noticed that she was in church, she was looking at it because it would go off and she stopped putting it on. And I thought that was very powerful to take that away from herself so she could enjoy her moment.
Mhm.
Now, your consumers today, your prosumers today,
Yeah.
they want to actually check you out on the your social media accounts because they know how to behave in that space already.
Mhm.
They've been Starbucks. They've been trained. If you go into a Starbucks today and you said to them you wanted a chai latte, they're going to say, what size?
Yeah.
They have not even pushed the button because they're training you to say venti, then say chai latte with all your 75 different little things that you're going to doodads you're going to do to it. Okay. So the same goes that these different social media accounts have behavioral metrics have trained your prosumer clients to behave, and that's one of the reasons I love certain people who have like logins for their clients because they're already, and even on Females in Finance, if you go to our page, the logins on the right, I mean, it's very intentional. I assure you, that's where you're starting to use,
Mhm.
things that are going on in the normal atmosphere, but using it towards your financial advisor practice in a way that your clients are already being trained because you're likely not going to retrain them, Tiara, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to retrain them from these spaces. So try to get into the flow of where you can with that stuff. They are researching you. If you do not have a strong social media presence, let this be. Don't try to come out and help Females in Finance yet. Go get your social media hooked up first and do all of that. Then come back because it's really important that you're out there and you're telling the story. Everybody thinks they're different.
Yeah.
I have every advisor say to me, "Oh, I'm different because," and I love to linger and say, if this person says a holistic planner, I'm gonna,
Mhm.
I'm every time somebody says a holistic planner, a marketing kitten dies somewhere. Okay, so stop saying that. Instead, tell me what you do different.
Yep.
I love when I hear about advisors that maybe their focus of their clients are some of the unsavory positions, occupations that other people in the past would never have touched, but they're working in. That does make you different. And I really
Mhm.
think that that's amazing. I want to hear what really makes you different. Accept that greatness of who you are, like in that. Go out and tell that story on social media because prosumers are definitely looking for you and they've already done research on you before they've even picked up the phone or called you. And if
Mhm.
anybody here thinks that they're going to own the word investments or whatever,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
That that's crazy. There's millions and millions and millions of dollars being poured into those by large corporations who can afford it. I say afford because there's a lot of things that could be spending that money on. That's a whole different webinar. But instead, long tail searching, answer
Mhm.
people's questions, write a blog article about it. You're more likely from a local capacity to pick up clientele that way. And when they ask the question, I think those are the things that I see the top FAs, the successful financial advisors, that's what they're doing. And they're doing these incrementally things, but they've got a good social media presence. They're out there talking, they're in spaces, and they're not using jargon. They're challenging the status quo.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Then I think we might have a question here. Let's see it coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in with the question, actually, just going off of what you said, Sheryl.
Yeah.
How are some ways in which the industry can evolve and improve how we serve, women advisors?
Yeah, how can we do that? Oh boy, the $1,000,000 question. I do think that the first thing that we could be doing in that space is for every person out there looking for a position to fill. I see it a lot of times. You've probably seen this too, Tiara, where people say, I'm going to grow my team, or I'm going to add somebody in practice. I actually reach out to those people and say, could you tell me a little bit about how you're wanting to fill that, where you're looking for individuals? And a lot of times what they don't know is unconscious bias, part of what we just talked about. And I think that if those of us in leadership across financial advisor space, Marks, the Sheryls, the everybody, if we could go out there and say, I just challenge you to really try to look at somebody very different than you've ever seen before, I think that's where they'll start going and looking at a Mark going, hey, Mark's doing it. I should do that too. It's very important as leaders that we set that tone in that space, but then we talk about it too. I think somebody who does this very well is Adam Holt. I don't think there's anybody here at Adam Holt at Asset Map. He is very aware. He's very aware of DEI. He's very aware of making certain that women have representation and voices in spaces. He challenges himself against it. I think that that's really critical, because that's where the real change happens, when we decide that we are aware there's a problem, accept that it's a problem, adopt it, and then adapt it. Okay. And for those of you here who are, I'm aware there is a problem, that is great. You've taken step one. But step two is accepting the problem into your individual business, whatever that looks like, and then adopting what you can do about it. You can adapt it to your business later on, but if people like to adapt first, and that's actually like the wrong way, and it's going to come back later, that didn't work. And I'm like, no, you didn't, because you didn't adopt the principle of how to make the change happen. So I think leaders need to talk about it more often. It's not a taboo subject. And I want to say this from the other side too, because I'm very conscientious, very cognizant of men. I think men are wonderful in this profession. Just because I'm winning doesn't mean I want a man to lose.
Yeah.
I want to be really clear about that. I told a story one time of my grandkids. I have 14 grandkids, and my two oldest boys are 13, 14 now. They would correct me right now. 14. Sorry, Jay. Sorry, Carter. They're twins. And Jay always says, I'm the oldest. I'm like, his brother's like 9 minutes, man. It was 9 minutes, dude. Chill out. But they have a little sister, Avery. And I was I'm grandma. I was putting ice cream in a bowl. And they came over, and my granddaughter said, me too. And I said, no problem. So I grab another bowl out and I scoop. And immediately she looks at her bowl and looks at her brother's bowl. And she says, well, why did they get more? And I said, you know what, Avery, you are right. And I reached in, and immediately, without missing a beat, Carter's like, well, I'm bigger than her. And I'm like, what do you care? Did it come out of your bowl? And he's like, no. I said, exactly. And I said, and you know what you should have done is you should have said, Grandma, there's not enough in here for Avery. This is where the advocating part comes in. Make sure she gets the same amount that we do, because your voice is important, because you are bigger and older. And he was like, oh, okay. He understood at 14 and 8 equity. That's all we talked about was equity. We just want equitable situations for everyone. And so this is where I think we can do a lot better if men will recognize that organizations like mine don't want you to lose. In fact, I want you to win. I need you to win. But your winning means I get to win too. It's not it's not a contest. It's not a scorekeeping activity. It's we both get to actually win in this scenario when we advocate for each other.
What more can the men allies do in order to, show that they're available resources, really put themselves out there to show that I am an ally to this organization, to the women in my industry?
They can do a couple of things. One, they can become a member of Females in Finance. I'm going to do some self-promotion there. But no, in all seriousness, they could actually go out. I'd love to see men talk more often about the women in their office too. There's a lot of fantastic men out there who have just beautiful companies. But I do, and I actually said this at an event one time. If every woman in financial services, an administrative role, got up, walked out of their job, financial services would crash today as we know it. We are so dependent on women from an administrative position. If that's the case and you're sitting in a situation right now where you are a man, a potential male ally, use your allyship, please, and start talking about the people behind the scenes more often than talking about yourself. Because let's be honest, they're probably doing a majority of the work to make you look good out there, which is great. Give them some accolades, because people, whether it's me or others, are going, great. One time I had a gentleman say to me, he doesn't do it because he's afraid that they're going to look so good that people are going to try to hire them away from him. And I said, well, whose problem is that? Not the person that you're giving the accolades to. It's yours to make sure that you create an environment so wonderful they want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I'll tell you right now, women and people of color statistically do not leave jobs, they leave people.
Yeah.
They like having stability. Financial duress is not in their love language. Okay, so if that's the case, build a place where people don't want to leave and talk about them more. Tell people like me, like, I have this amazing registered agent in my office. Her name's Joy. She does this and that. I'd love to hear those stories, and we will give you a space to do it and cheer you on. A lot of times I don't get to hear those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we've created such a safe space at Females in Finance. We hear about them behind the scenes.
Yep.
That doesn't always excite people to know, but it is true. So if you're wanting to be a male ally, allyship's a verb, it's action. Do something. Whether it's join organizations like mine or any of the others that are out there, there's plenty of them. I do think we're different, but in all seriousness, maybe it's volunteering at places that you didn't expect to. For example, Girl Scouts of America, where you can be a Girl Scout leader, you can be in leadership at Girl Scouts, even though you might not be consider yourself a girl. When I lived in California, the person who had a troop next to mine was a gentleman. He was an insurance agent, and I asked him, I said, "Why do you do this?" And he says, "Because I have 2 daughters, and I wanted to do something, and this is what they wanted to do. So you know what? I became a Girl Scout." And he was a Girl Scout leader of the troop, and he was fabulous. His name was Richard. And I used to always have to compete with him because he would always have more people buying his cookies and stuff because he had a huge insurance office, et cetera. But as joking as it was so refreshing to watch him out there being active and vibrant in his girls' lives on the front lines, not just behind cheering, but actually being in that frontline space. I thought it was beautiful. So I think there's a lot of ways you can use your allyship. And it may not look like the way you would expect.
I like that. I think we're coming up on time here, so I want to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can get involved in women in finance, where they can access that information, or if they want to hear additional information, really just give you an opportunity to share more here before we answer some questions.
Oh, I appreciate that. So anyone can go to femalesandfinance.com. So men, that's you too. Please click that. For the men, if it makes you feel better, go to maleallynetwork.com. That also goes to Females in Finance, but through the Male Ally Network place. And learn a little bit about us. We actually offer free membership to the end of the year, so you can take a chance on us without being out anything. And we'd love to have you. I do think that some of the things that we do, I know Mark participates in a lot of our fintech roundtables as an example. And I hear Linda Whittick, who is our chief operating officer and our head of partnership, she does such a glowing job in that space. I want to give her accolade because I learned so much. And I know Mark does too. And we've learned together, like sitting side by side, which has been great. But I do think we do such a good job of providing, wonderful events and networking and such. But I do think that the other part of it is the friendships behind the scenes of what's been created and crossed over so many different from fintech to finserv, male, female. I mean, the list goes on. And I never thought in a million years. I mean, I'm so grateful for people who come and spend that space and time with us. Even today, I'm grateful for the people who are here. Although I may not be able to see you, I do know you're here and you're spending this time out of your day to learn about this and how you can improve upon the things that you're already doing. And I thank you for that. So femalesandfinance.com, or just send me an email, Sheryl. I answer all of them. My name's Sheryl, Sheryl, at femalesandfinance.com. Would love to get to know you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Whatever's more comfortable. I believe in mental health, and not everybody's as extroverted as I am, and that's totally fine. And so just do what feels right for you in that connection space, and we'll be happy to help out where we can.
Correct. And as a side note, anyone that is involved with Females in Finance organization does get a 10% discount off of any Tolerisk subscription. So if you are interested in joining or hearing more about whether it is Females in Finance or Tolerisk, definitely let us know. We'll send a follow-up email here after the interview has wrapped up. That'll have both of our information on it, so you guys can always hear more.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
So I think we have a couple questions here. Let me just make sure. Okay. One was, with trillions of wealth controlled by women, how should the industry evolve to improve and how we service them?
Yeah, you definitely. I'll give you a good one right now. So we figured out, some of us a little earlier than others, community driven. It does work. I've been doing this a minute, and I'm very excited to watch some of these, especially the fee only space. Although I see fee based advisors doing the same thing too, is taking a step back from your practice to see, how do I evolve this practice to answer the questions of what consumers, prosumers want to have. You've got some who want to DIY it themselves, some who want some hand holding. It's the same. It's that part doesn't actually change. It's not proprietary to me. That's people. So I'm really excited to watch some of these advisors create membership tiers of financial planning, so that it makes it either more affordable for those who want to do it in a group environment. Some people are totally happy to do that. Some really want that one high, touch one-on-one. Totally can make that happen too. I think the other thing too is partnering across. I can't tell you enough. I was at the Shift conference last year, and I was listening, and I was on this panel, and somebody was like, "Oh, you got to do this, and you got to do chat, GPT, and I'm thinking, has anybody met a financial advisor? Because I don't want you guys doing any of that. I have people, 4,628 of them to be exact, who probably can help you with some capacity of that. We have fractional planners. If you don't like doing the financial planning part, but you want someone who does, we got one. If you need someone who's a marketing, we got one. If you need somebody to do financial coaching for your clients, we got one. I don't think advisors should be everything, but I do think that they can offer a very robust set of services by creating, sort of influence relationships, relationship equity with others, so that they are more appealing to a broader audience of clients. And I also think too, that talking about the improving or evolving and how we improve and serve them, I assure you, every single person watching this now and on replay, you have driven by more people today than you'll ever be able to help in your lifetime. And that is sometimes a little sobering to realize, because we think, we're driving by neighborhoods of people who think, one, they can't afford a plan, or two, I don't have an estate to plan. You own property. Yes, you do. There's a lot of things that we've done this to ourselves, by the way. This is our fault. We were so elite and did all these, and we got to be more realistic with what everyday people look like today. I think evolving your practice to be more inclusive of those who may not have, millions of dollars to invest, but that's not to say that they won't. That's not to say that that person's not influential to another person who is, or who knows that person. So I've been watching and sitting back, and I think something else that makes me different, Tiara, I go into advisors' offices and job shadow them. And I want to know, how are you doing this practice? I've been to Stoy Hall's office and at Black Mammoth in Des Moines, and sat with him for 2 days and watched him meet with clients just to see what that's like. I've been in Nick Gertzema's office for Gertzema Wealth up in St. Joe, Missouri, and watched him. I just got done with Lei Dang last week here in St. Louis. So I think that's one thing that makes me a little different in a community leadership position, is that I'm actually going in and sitting with advisors and watching them run their practice to see what else we can be doing to be, helpful, but also what can we do to serve that particular person. And so if you have offerings of things that you're not making the best use of, or you keep thinking, partner with someone who does that work well. Don't think you have to take it on yourself, because you'll fail, because you'll be in overwhelm. And I think that's how we evolve, to serve others in a new way that doesn't necessarily mean it has to come out of our bucket of time.
And then, in your opinion, kind of best ways to find that person that's going to be, your mentor or the person that you are able to ask questions to. Do you guys have a list of people that are open to being mentors on your website, or what other resources would you list?
Yeah, so we have a formal mentorship program where people can come in, and a lot of times this is interesting because people don't know how to be a mentee, which is like actually work. It's not like you get to be on my calendar and then just be like, "Hi, Sheryl." No, we're going to talk about work you're going to do, and I have mentors. I mean, Adam Holt is one of my mentors. I meet with him and he gives me advice on how to be a leader, and I have several others like that. So I have to learn we have to teach others how to be mentees in order to be mentors. Okay. I think that's important. But yeah, you can search for that. I think the other thing too is when you're in a network of people, if you're in a network of everybody's like you're not going to be very diversified in your offering. That's another thing too that I think we did well from the get-go is bring people in to do certain types of work, and as well as everybody else who does that too. We do tend to be very appealing to registered investment advisors as an example, but we have financial coaches, we have underwriters and life insurance people, et cetera. So going in and doing searches. And the other thing is go back to somebody you really trust. And I do get this quite a bit. I tell everybody I have limited talents. I can't make mac and cheese for my grandkids for some reason. I just can't. I don't. But man, I know everybody in financial services. So they do come to me and say, Sheryl, who does this well? Who does that well? And then I make connections between them. So find out who your go-to is. If you don't have a go-to, I'll raise my hand. I'll be your go-to, and ask us, because we love nothing more than connecting those people so that you are staying in your greatness, which is whether it's being a financial planner or you're, working in fintech and such. And then you've got an addendum, somebody to add on that actually does something else better than you. And that's okay that they do better than you in that space.
I think that might have been our last question here. Just confirming. Yep. I think that was our last question that came through. So we really appreciate your time today and you sharing some insights on females in finance.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. But everyone that attended the webinar today, you will get a recording. You will also get my contact information. You'll get a link to how to get involved with females in finance. So if you do have any questions, feel free to respond to our emails. You could ask the questions. We'll still make sure that we do get those answered for you. But other than that, we appreciate everyone's time for joining today, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.